Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome everyone. Today we're going to be talking about Fatal Invitation Part 3. Today we're going to be talking about the tragic life of Shonda Sharr. Melinda Loveless was born in New Albany, Indiana on October 28, 1975. And she would be born to both parents, Marjorie and Larry Loveless, who were married. And Melinda would be one of 3 daughters. It is said that Larry Loveless would be drafted into the Vietnam War, and during his time in the Vietnam War, he would quickly move up the ranks to the rank of sergeant, and when he arrived home, he would be greeted and welcomed as a hero. But as you'll soon find out how he was in his home life with his wife and daughters, he would be anything but. His then wife, Marjorie Loveless, would often describe Larry as a sexual deviant, and at a lot of times would very openly not only wear his daughter's underwear, but also put on their makeup. It's also been stated that Larry Loveless was incapable of staying monogamous, and Marjorie would often say that he had a fascination but also a jealousy of watching his wife Marjorie being sexual with other men and women. It's said that during his military service, Larry would work irregularly at the Southern Railway, and after his military service, he would just work whenever it was convenient for him at the railway. In 1965, Larry Loveless would actually become a probation officer with the New Albany Police Department. But Larry would eventually get terminated from this job within 8 months, as himself and a partner of his would actually assault an African-American male that Larry Loveless had accused for sleeping with his wife. In 1988, Larry Loveless would briefly work as a mail carrier, but he would quit after 3 months. And it is said during this time he hardly worked, and he would be known for taking the mail to his house and destroying it. Now, during all these jobs, it is said that Marjorie Loveless would work intermittently since 1974. And it's said that when the two were working, the two would actually live very upper middle class in a place called Floyd's Knobs, Indiana. Now, it should be noted that Larry Loveless by nature was not only verbally abusive, but very physically abusive. And it should also be noted, even when he wasn't working, he was not contributing any of his money to the family. And when Larry Loveless was working, any of the money he had accumulated, as I said, he would never spend it on his family, but instead he would purchase things for himself, like cars, motorcycles, firearms, and so on. And it is said that Larry Loveless would actually file for bankruptcy in 1980. Extended family members of the Loveless family would often describe Larry Loveless' marriage as loveless, and would often recall the daughters coming to their residence looking very starved or looking like they had not eaten for quite some time. It should also be noted that Larry Loveless and Marjorie Loveless would often frequent a lot of bars, and during their times and trips to these bars, they would more or less disguise themselves as different people, where Larry would often portray that he was a dentist or a doctor, and he would often introduce other patrons at the bar, Marjorie as his girlfriend, where he would try to convince other men and women to come to their house and actually sleep with Marjorie. Marjorie would actually make a statement and say that this was just a normal thing for Larry Loveless. And she would even go and say that not only would they go to bars, but Larry would even try to bring his friends from work over to the house and encourage them to sleep with Marjorie, which Marjorie thought was very disgusting. On one occasion, Marjorie would recall, after having an orgy with another couple, after the event, she would actually sneak off and try to commit suicide. And unfortunately, this would be an occurring pattern within her daughter's childhood. It is said that when Melinda was 9 years old, Marjorie would actually get gang raped by Larry and some friends of his. And after the grape, Marjorie would try to drown herself in a tub. Marjorie would tell Larry after the incident that she would refuse to have sex with him for a full month. But this didn't stop Larry whatsoever, as he would often try to grape her on a regular basis. And it should also be noted that during these grapings, their daughters could overhear everything through a closed door. In 1986, Marjorie would actually put her foot down and refuse Larry to take two girls home. And it is said that when she would tell Larry no, he would become so enraged that he would beat her severely. And it should be noted that the beatings were so severe that Marjorie had to be hospitalized. And eventually, Larry was arrested for battery. Now, it's not sure how much atrocities that Larry Loveless committed within the family home, but there have been various testimonies throughout court and throughout family members to kind of paint a picture of the kind of person Larry Loveless was. Family members have claimed that Larry actually fondled his daughter Melinda when she was an infant. And Marjorie would later claim that he would molest her 13-year-old sister early in their marriage. They would also claim that he would molest their daughter's cousin Teddy from the moment that she was 10 years old to 14. Now, Melinda's sisters would actually claim that Larry did in fact molest them growing up, but Melinda would deny any claims that her father ever molested her. But it should be noted that throughout her lifetime till she was 14 years old, she would sleep in the same bed as her father. So there's really no telling how much atrocities he committed to Melinda. But whatever happened in that bedroom has been between Larry and Melinda. She's never confirmed nor denied any molestations. The cousin Teddy that I had just mentioned earlier would also make a confession in court that on one occasion she witnessed that Larry had tied up all three of his daughters in the garage and would grape each of them in succession. But this would be count out of the court records because the daughters would actually disclaim this testimony and would say that there was no truth to that. And even though the daughters would actually deny that claim, they would say, however, that Larry Loveless was very physically and verbally abusive. And on one occasion, the girls would recall an instance where Larry would actually intentionally fire his handgun and intentionally miss his older daughter, Michelle. The daughters would also say that Larry had a habit of trying to embarrass his daughters. And whenever company would come over to the house, he would very openly come downstairs where the family or friends were hanging out and pull out his daughter's underwear and smell them in front of the family. When Melinda was 5 years old, Larry and Marjorie would actually become very involved in Graceland Baptist Church. And it is said there that during this sermon that Larry and Marjorie would give a full confession. And it's said after this confession that Larry and Marjorie would actually quit their drinking and swinging. And while they would become members of this church, Larry would eventually become a lay preacher and Marjorie would become a school nurse. After this, the church would later arrange for Melinda be taken to a hotel room with a 50-year-old man for a 5-hour exorcism. Try to keep in mind when this happened, Melinda was only 5 years old and spent 5 hours in a hotel room with a 50-year-old man. And if that wasn't bad enough, the church would actually make Larry Loveless a marriage counselor in the church, where it can be said that Larry was known for being way too forward with the women in the congregation.